Oh, let me tell you something. Busting makes me feel good.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Blockbusting, the podcast where we love to hate movies. I'm your host, Jay Light. Joining me today, the wonderful, with a great Zoom background, it's Gwen Sunkel.
Hi, how's it going, Jay?
Hey, I'm good, Gwen. It's good to see you. It's been a very long time.
It has, since
Yes.
you were last here in the Midwest.
I was just talking to I was talking to Alex Price, and he sent me a message through Logan Bart, I think is how you pronounce his last name.
Mm-hmm.
Bart. Yep, but I did a show with him this week. With Logan, yeah, and he said some nice things from Alex, and I was like, "Oh, I should." Alex is bugging me about going back to Indianapolis,
Come on back.
a year ago, so I got to make it out. I'm supposed to go. I'm going to Kansas City for NACA in a couple weeks, so maybe
That's just
that'll
a
get me enough
few
of the
days
Midwest.
drive from there, so you're practically there already. So
Yeah.
I should mention Logan Barrett, best hair in comedy.
He does have phenomenal hair.
Man is a Pantene commercial.
It's great hair.
Yeah.
It's flowing. It's beautiful. Gwen, it's great to see you, and I'm glad comedy things are popping off for you. You got an album coming out soon.
I do. Yeah. It's going to come out at the end of February. I recorded it in November. I don't have an exact date yet because I'm not a professional. So, but it will be the end of February, sometime around my birthday, which is the 25th. So, yeah, I'm very excited about that. I recorded it in November. It's called No More Tears. And it's all about, the hellscape of the last 2.5 years, but how I just don't have anything left to cry about it.
Cool. Well,
All
that's good. I'm glad you were able to process the trauma and turn it into comedy, because that's what comedy is all about.
Exactly.
So y'all should keep an eye out for No More Tears from Gwen whenever that is out, which will be pretty soon. So keep your eyes peeled and follow. I'm sure they can follow you on social media and see specific dates and stuff. Yes.
Yes. I'm at Gwender Woman on all the places that you follow people, which is like Wonder Woman, but
with Gwen
instead of Juan.
How come they didn't name the actual Wonder Woman Gwen? That would have been, or Guinevere. That could have been, it's right there.
Yeah, it really is, but they didn't ask me.
I blame DC for being bad at comic books. I don't know. I'm probably getting too spicy with my takes because I don't know anything about comic books anyway. Moving on.
That surprises me, actually. You look like you know a lot about comic books.
I do, right? I should. I have a friend of mine who is a super, super duper comic book nerd, way more than me. He's big on Marvel. He loves Spider-Man and Fantastic Four and all that stuff. But yeah, I never got into him. I've read a couple graphic novels here and there. I love Watchmen, but that's about it.
Yeah.
Anyway, Gwen, so let's stop talking about stuff we like and start talking about stuff we don't like, which is the whole premise of the fucking show.
Yeah.
A movie you brought to me, I had never seen it before, no desire to see it, definitely no desire to watch it ever again. It is 2001's Hannibal, sequel to The Silence of the Lambs.
Yes. I hated this movie.
With good reason. This is not a good movie, as I learned.
Now, in order for us to really get into why I hated the movie Hannibal, we have to travel back in time a few years.
Oh, sure. Let's travel.
Yeah, let's travel to a time when young Gwen was 12 going on 13. And my family had moved into a new home, but it wasn't all the way finished yet. It needed the walls put up for bedrooms and stuff inside the house. So mine and my sister's room were in the basement, and those were the last ones to get done. This is a pivotal time for people to have their own room and things like that. So I was very much looking forward to this, having my own room situation. And, I was kind of like just sleeping on the couch in our family living room and for several months leading up to this. So my birthday, aforementioned, rolls around, and my parents are like, hey, why don't you go stay at your friend's house for the weekend? And, you guys can go do birthday stuff and whatever. So they send me away to stay with my friend. And while I'm at my friend's house, we watch the movie The Silence of the Lambs. And
oh boy,
it was the most terrifying goddamn thing I'd ever seen in my life. And it just, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I mean, like every time I would try to close my eyes, like it was all I would see was Hannibal Lecter in my head. Still to this day, I have a very visceral reaction to that character.
He's a big old creep. I can see why.
Yeah. It was very creepy. So
the willies.
I go home at the end of that weekend, and my parents are like, hey, we have a surprise for you. And I get home, and it's that they have spent all weekend finishing my room so that I like have my own room in the basement now.
That's nice.
Yeah. But I get there and I just burst into tears. Like, I can't be down here because I'm very scared of this movie that I watched over the weekend.
Sure.
So to convince me that like Anthony Hopkins was just an actor and I didn't have to be afraid of him, my mom rented the movie The Remains of the Day and had me watch that. So to like reset, so I'd be like, oh yeah, he's not scary in everything that he does.
Give you a little palate cleanser. I've actually never seen The Remains of the Day. What's The Remains of the Day about?
So The Remains of the Day is a very, very mature movie. Again, nothing that a 12 or 13-year-old needs to be watching. Just simply because it was boring. But it's about like a butler who has like an unrequited love where he was in love with like the maid of the place that he worked.
Okay.
And he's kind of like reminiscing about their times together, and then he like goes to visit her or something. So it's kind of like if Downton Abbey was like a movie, and it was less interesting, like a less interesting version of Downton Abbey is what The Remains of the Day is about.
All right. Okay. So you see this, this pleasant PBS movie.
Yes.
You basically get, Anthony Hopkins, he's a nice butler. Everything's fine. I don't have to worry about him sneaking into my basement room and eating my face.
Right.
But then.
So I still carried a lot of fear about the movie Silence of the Lambs for several years after that, and really influenced like my ability to watch other horror films and such. I have never really liked them, never enjoyed them. But then 2001 rolls around, and the movie Hannibal is coming out. Mm-hmm. One of the people who lived on my hall in my dorm in college was like, "Hey, we should go see this." And I was like, "Oh, and I explained the whole story or whatever." And I was like, "This is silly. I need to face my fears, right? I need to just get over this and go see this movie and own my own destiny and stop being like controlled by this fear of this movie from my childhood." So
take the power back.
Yeah, I'm taking the power back. So I go to see the movie Hannibal, and it was just awful. Part of why Silence of the Lambs was so scary was because it was so realistic. Like, mm-hmm. and like nothing. Hannibal was just a complete departure from that. And I got a lot of opinions.
I mean, there's a lot of, I did watch, so Silence of the Lambs I did not see until very recently. I actually did an earlier episode of the show about it. And
you hate Silence of the Lambs.
Amy Silverberg.
Oh, hey, Amy.
And she was one of the only people who I've had on the show who they couldn't finish watching the movie because, not because they didn't like it. Well, she didn't like it, but she was so scared by it that she stopped watching it twice.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that would be me if I had to rewatch that. I don't know if I could.
Yeah, and she made the mistake. At least you were watching it with a friend. She watched it solo while she was dog sitting in an empty house,
Yeah,
which is a horrible place to watch Silence of the
absolutely.
Lambs. That movie's
Yeah.
terrifying.
It is.
But this movie, it's so over the top in way. Like, I think what worked about Silence of the Lambs is that Silence of the Lambs, while terrifying, is also so much more subtle. Like, there's a lot of there's a lot of more suspense that's built, and of course there's some larger set piece kind of things. Of course, all the stuff that happens with Jamie Gumb is all as terrifying and like big and over the top production design wise as it gets, but it still has like this subtlety to it, and particularly in the performances. There's there's this undercurrent of subtlety that this movie just doesn't quite have. Like, I mean, Anthony Hopkins is doing a solid job, and
he's barely in it though. Don't you feel like?
Well, he's barely in Silence of the Lambs. In this, I think that part of the problem that I had with the movie is that he has so much more screen time. And I think what worked about Silence of the Lambs is that he's barely in Silence of the Lambs. And that adds to the mystique of Hannibal as a character.
Yeah.
In this, like, sure, he's still not in it a ton, but he's in it way more. He's got a lot more stuff happening to him on camera and stuff that he's involved in. And it just it takes away the power of his character. Yeah.
I absolutely described it during the rewatch as ham-fisted. The entire movie was just so you're right. The psychological mess with your mind aspect was what was so terrifying about Silence of the Lambs, and how he could really get into these people's head and see what made them tick almost immediately, and then just in Hannibal, it was almost like he had a kind of supernatural knowledge about people that it was well, this isn't scary because there's no way he could have known that, Yeah.
In this movie, it seemed like he was kind of a mind reader or a hypnotist in ways that it didn't seem like it jived with the way his character's portrayed in the first movie.
Absolutely.
And I don't know if that's a product of, the way the character is portrayed in the novel, because I know this is based off of a novel. Which is a sequel to the original Silence of the Lambs. But that's the other thing. So I think there's so many problems in the production of this movie that also bled into the movie itself too. So this movie, of course, it comes out 10 years after Silence of the Lambs. The original Silence of the Lambs, 91. This movie, 2001, hugely anticipated.
Yes.
They were planning on bringing back both Jodie Foster and Anthony Hopkins.
Jodie Foster rightly said, absolutely not. I couldn't possibly.
Yeah, totally bailed. And same thing, Jonathan Demme was supposed to do the movie also. And he was interested in developing an adaptation of the novel because the novel had not been finished at the time. Mm-hmm. And he bailed. He said it took them in a direction it didn't make sense. He said he found the material was lurid and too gory.
Yes.
Which it absolutely is. It's much more violent than Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah, and if you would think that more violent than a movie about a dude who eats people's faces. That's really saying something. But again, the violence and gore in Silence of the Lambs was so understated that I think that's what gave it a lot of its power.
Yes. I think I always think back in Silence of the Lambs, it's near the end, but the sequence where Clarice is in the house and running around the basement in the dark, trying to save herself and fight off Jamie Gumb. It's terrifying, but you can't really see anything that's happening. You can't see any of the violence. It's just you feel a sense of dread and terror.
Yes.
And in this movie, it doesn't have that same sense of dread because everything is presented to you in this very, there's some parts where they're trying to clearly make it a little bit more artsy and lit in certain ways. I think, a lot of stuff that happens back in the church in Italy, it's very much like that.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have the same level of creeping dread and suspense that Silence of the Lambs did, because everything here is just out for you, ready, right from the jump.
Right. Yeah. No, absolutely. I also had a problem in this one with I thought in Silence of the Lambs, so I work in medicine, and so part of the reason I don't care for horror movies is that I always tell people I've actually watched someone bleed to death, and I don't want to watch it for fun, but the bleeding and the violence and in Silence of the Lambs was so realistic,
right?
Where in Hannibal, it was just you can't cut someone's hand off with one swipe of a butcher knife. Cutting through human bone is very difficult. It's not, that's just not, so a lot of that kind of stuff felt real over the top to me. The shootout at the beginning, what was that?
Oh, the shootout at the beginning. This is where, I took notes. The first problem I had with this movie from the jump, the shootout is so involved in this, but they have the downside of Clarice in this movie is that they make Clarice out to be an incompetent agent. And
exactly.
That's not the case. It's so clearly not the case when you watch the things that she does, but I have no reason to believe that the FBI would not back her. And they would be like, oh, she's crazy. She's unhinged. The media coverage alone of them being like, oh, well, she killed a mom. She didn't just kill a random mom. They killed a suspect in a drug raid and other people who were involved in the drug ring.
Yeah.
How is this front page news of anything that's not protected? There's no way the FBI does not have their media relations department on this immediately in the real world. This is totally unbelievable that they would allow their agent to get slandered like this in the press.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. It was, and just the whole idea that they have 40 people coming in all with guns to arrest one person is so ridiculous.
And also, this is, I guess it's kind of playing off of the theme of the first movie, which is we have a woman in the department. We don't know if she's going to be as effective as the men in the department, right? Where they have this whole, it even starts at the very beginning of this scene where they have the police officer from the DC cops who is just oh, why do we have to listen to you? Yeah. And I think it's not, again, this is so over the top in ways that it's not in Silence of the Lambs. Silence of the Lambs, all of that stuff with the gender politics of it, it felt more subtle. It was played more subtle. This, it's over the top right from the jump. And I don't think that it works. I think the script, here's another problem that I have. The script is it's written by two screenwriters, David Mamet and Steven Zalian. And everybody in the production side said that David Mamet's script was awful and that Steven Zalian's script was good, but it seemed like they had a lot of stuff that was still in there from this bad David Mamet draft. And I think that some of this way that Clarice is treated is left over from that draft, and nobody from the studio is like, all right, cool. Let's make things subtle like the first movie. Let's just let stuff be over the top.
Yeah. Ray Liotta's character with her is so over the top. That. Just in a way that no one would talk to another human being,
Not at all.
Yeah. Regardless of your knowing each other, maybe you would talk to your estranged sibling like that or something, but yeah, no. And then the whole idea that she would let this situation get this out of control or whatever in the beginning, it just never would have happened. The whole point of her, it was that she was so by the book and so conscientious and crossed every T and dotted every I. And then Dr. Lecter showed her that it's everything doesn't go that way in the real world. But but yeah, in something like that where they're doing like a planned arrest or raid of something, that never would have happened if it was Jodie Foster's.
Never would have happened.
Yeah.
And it's such a shame that the script does Clarice this huge of a disservice and discredits her character so bad, because I don't feel like anyone in the audience buys that she is as bad as they're saying she is. And it really it's just such a weird choice to make, to put your lead or one of your leads in this position where she's like having to, I mean, I get from a story standpoint, like, oh, okay, she has to do the thing where she's like, this is how we get her into the Hannibal trying to recapture him at all. This is how we get him into Mason Verger. But there's a better way to do that, I think. And there's a way to do that in which you're not making your lead character go through problems in the plot that don't feel like they would actually be problems in the real world.
Yeah. I feel like they were just doing that so much to set up like the ending where Hannibal kills Ray Liotta.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, he really needs to exact some revenge on this guy because he messed with his best girl. And yeah, in doing that, they just blew any kind of like the magic of subtlety out of the water. But that makes sense that David Mamet wrote that, because he is a ham-fisted guy.
Yes, he's not subtle. He made a ham-fisted Hannibal. And and here's the other, like, so they got, obviously we have a different director on too. There's some directorial choices here that I don't mind. I think that there's some of the scene composition I do think is really good. I think that there's some good choices made. It's a little over the top, but I did love the Ray Liotta brains eating scene from the very end of the movie.
Are you kidding me? Well, okay, so this is another thing where me like having any kind of knowledge of healthcare just ruins that scene for me.
Fire away, please.
Like, you have to have a bone saw to cut through someone's skull, and like head wounds bleed a lot more than that. And there's no way that he could have balanced like the sedation to have him be like that lucid and not care that he's having his head cut off.
Right. That's a great point. Yeah, it was I haven't seen a scalpel ever that's strong enough to cut through skull.
No, absolutely not. And him he has a baseball cap over it. Are you kidding?
That's the thing. That's the part. I think the gratuitousness kind of works there, but it's hard because it's like the only time that I think it's even remotely interesting.
Yeah, I suppose so. It also looked, the CGI on it, I thought was real bad.
Oh yeah. This movie does not have a lot of good effects. Like there's clearly room where they could have done some more practical effects. But even that's the thing. Like, this movie feels it's so over the top that like I don't know why they didn't just go full bore. Like the scene where the guy gets disemboweled, gross, super gross. They went practical there, and it added to the grossness. And I didn't like it, and I don't think a lot of people liked it. But at least they did a practical effect and made it look realistic.
That's very true. Yeah. No, that all of those scenes in the church I thought were like really beautiful, but maybe that was just because they were like in a church or whatever. But that particular juxtaposition of like the grossness of that practical effect in the church definitely that did something for you. But yeah, and the idea that Ray Liotta would like want and enjoy a bite of his own brain is just get out of here.
I mean, yeah, I can't, even with part of your brain missing, I still feel like you probably would not you would know what's going on a little bit. I can't speak to the medical side of it. You have a little bit more knowledge there than I do.
He knows enough to like insult Clarice Starling and, oh
yeah, that's true. And he forgets Clarice like the moment after that happens anyway, which is super, like, that doesn't make sense. We already know. He just said that he knows who Clarice is.
Yeah. Yeah.
He says this before he even gets a part of his brain cut out.
Yeah. That Also, Ray Liotta to me played that character like he was in the movie Goodfellas, like that
Yes.
kind of over the top good old boy. And I was like, is Joe Pesci about to walk in here and be like, "What are you doing in my mom's table?" Like, it just seemed not like what an FBI agent would look or act like.
Yeah. Especially that scene. I mean, yeah, I know he's corrupt, so he's supposed to be a little bit bad. But like, even that scene where he's talking to Mason Verger and he's like playing with a tennis racket and he's he's accepting a bribe. It's so cavalier. It's not any kind of secretive at all. It's
Yeah, like I do
again,
this all the time.
it's
I
so
take
over the top.
$500,000 bribes every day.
It's so out in the open. It's ridiculous.
Yeah,
This movie's ridiculous, Gwen.
it is. It is. Can we talk about how Mason Verger was ridiculous?
Yeah, we haven't even touched on Mason Verger.
Touched on him.
Let's touch on Mason.
Okay. First of all, in terms of practical effects, that makeup, it looked like they dug out the puppet from Tales of the Crypt and just put like, yeah. Like,
yeah, it was not good.
It's not good.
They I think, anytime you can see the person's real face peeking through under the makeup, which you could see happening a few times.
Oh yeah.
Not great.
Not great.
A bad call.
Yeah. I think it would have been more effective almost if he had you only saw his face once, and he otherwise wore like a wide brimmed hat or like a scarf or something, and almost again like that subtlety of Silence of the Lambs, where you barely see Hannibal Lecter, but he's still the most terrifying character in the movie. Because it's well, you only need to see this guy's face that. It would have been more effective, I think, to just see it once.
Yeah, I think there's so many problems with the way everything in this movie happens, especially Mason Verger, who's supposed to be more of a villain than Hannibal, because you're kind of rooting for Hannibal a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, he is getting this guy's uppance is coming.
Right. He's getting his uppance is certainly coming. And if you want to have that sense of dread, then don't show your villain.
Yeah.
Keep him in the shadows. Don't make him be a guy who's trying to parade how awful he looks.
Yeah.
Make him a guy who wants to stay sinister and stay in the dark.
Mm-hmm.
Let him watch his CNBC from his bed. Also, weird choice. Why are they showing all this stuff about the financial markets? Who gives a shit?
Yeah. No.
They have multiple scenes where people are checking, not even just Mason Verger. There's people there's a scene where I think the Italian cop clicks away from checking FBI stuff and he's looking at stocks, which doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. There was a lot of weird, to me, that kind of commentary shoved in there in a way that I didn't really understand. Where he is checking the FBI's website of the most wanted people, and Osama bin Laden is one of them. I was like, get the fuck out of here.
I mean, pre 9/11 too. Good thinking on their part.
Yeah. No, I think it was after 9/11, wasn't it?
It was released 9th of February 2001. So very close.
Okay. Gotcha.
I feel like maybe he was, Osama bin Laden was probably still a
For
guy
sure.
at that point.
Yeah, for sure. But
still, it's definitely all right, we get it. You guys are making some commentary on stuff that this movie doesn't need to be a social commentary.
No, absolutely not.
The original Silence of the Lambs was not an incisive social commentary. It was, it had some moments that I think added depth to the story.
Yeah.
And depth to the characters that are social issues. But but I think what worked so well in this was, or in Silence of the Lambs rather, was that it was so straightforward and had this mystery and dread and didn't really try and jam in a bunch of extra stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Even the editing of this movie felt off. This movie is, it's 2 hours, 11 minutes long. And I could have easily easily dealt with a solid 30 minutes less in this movie. There's so many weird editorial choices where they like leave a shot lingering for too long, or they do some weird some fades that doesn't make any sense.
Like birds over a lake or something.
Yeah, and they're like they'll play like a music sting, and it'll hold on a shot for just like a slow zoom that doesn't make any sense for why there's this slow zoom here. And it just feels like it clutters up the movie. Like, I feel like we could have gotten to all of this movie with about half of the stuff that happened in Italy. We don't need a lot of the Italian story to make this story make sense. Yeah.
No, definitely not. You're 100% correct. It almost felt like, okay, we want to make at least a 2-hour movie. Let's we already know that Hannibal is evil, and we don't need like more backstory on that.
Yeah, we know it. We don't need any of this other stuff. And also, okay, can we talk about the end?
Yes.
Well, I screamed "why" at my television when the end happened. The end is Hannibal allowing a child.
The end on the plane, or the end of like where he chops his own hand off to like get away from the police.
Well, the end on the plane.
Oh,
for sure. The hand part, I was like, this is ridiculous. But what am I expecting from this movie so far?
Well, it was very weird that where he like begged her to let him run away. Like Hannibal would never.
Hannibal would not do that.
Never ever.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, and then as I mentioned before, you can't chop your own hand off like that, and that's ridiculous to think that you can. The other piece of that really was ham-fisted and made me mad is the cookbooks on top of the refrigerator where her like ponytail was caught. They were vegetarian
cookbooks.
I was like, get the fuck out of here. I hate whoever did that.
Production design. I mean, here's the other thing. I think that maybe there are people in this movie, because there are times when people making a movie or a television show know they're making a bad movie or television show. And I think that maybe some of the people knew that was what was happening. Like, I think the people, for my money, who had the most fun making this movie were like the sound designers and the Foley artists, because some of the choices that they made.
Oh, yeah.
So ridiculous.
Yeah, that's very true.
The loudest mouse clicks I've ever heard in a movie ever.
Yeah. Yeah, and the pigs.
The pigs, yes. Oh wow, what a series of choices. They must have just had such fun, like standing in their recording booth, like mushing up ground beef with their hands.
Yes. Oh, gross. Yeah.
Clogging and unclogging vacuums
on the plane. Like the real ending on the plane.
Yes.
Was okay. First of all, no one is putting Tupperware in a brain to take it. Like Tupperware is like sushi, or brain is like sushi. I feel like it's like if you don't eat it that night, it's gone. All right.
Yeah.
There's no leftover brain.
No, you can't. Yeah, brain does not keep well.
Yeah. And also that's like the same type of Tupperware that I keep my weed in. So it's very upsetting to see that full of human brain. Secondly, children don't talk to other adults.
Absolutely not. Especially
no
not.
Child would be like, oh, let me strike up this conversation with full sentences with this person I've never met.
Who is disfigured, who has a sling, and presumably you can probably see that there's something more wrong with this man.
Yeah. Kids can pick up on that. They got
kids are intuitive. Kids have a gut instinct.
Yeah, and if he looks over at this guy with like who's missing a hand and eating a weird box full of figs and cheese, he's not going to be like, this is the kind of fellow that has something to offer me, you know? And then he feeds the kid a bite of the brain.
And then cut to black in the movie, or fade to black.
Not fade to black, but it goes out, like it pans out to like just his eye.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right.
In a circle, like it's a fucking Looney Tunes movie, and like Porky Pig is going to come back out. Like that's all, folks. What was that?
This is a bad ending. I hated this ending. I hated this movie. I think it's so bad. I don't know how this movie has mixed reviews.
Yeah, because like wherever I like rented it online to watch it, it got like 3 stars, but then I was reading something online and it was like 4.8 stars.
Yeah.
I think people just love Anthony Hopkins and they love Julianne Moore and they wanted it to work, so they were like, we'll give it to you.
Yeah, they love Gary Oldman too. I mean, here's the thing. I think the performances were good between those three. But everything else, bad. Everything else, so bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't understand how this movie, I mean, I guess I do understand. It's because everybody was like, oh, it's the sequel to Silence of the Lambs. That's how this movie broke box office records and made almost $352 million at the box office.
That is pretty amazing because you have to think it couldn't have cost that much to make.
Yeah, it cost $87 million was the budget.
Oh, that's nothing.
Yeah, especially for like, I mean, it's definitely on the higher end for a movie like this, but it's clearly like a drop in the bucket given the kinds of movies that we're already, we've seen huge big budget blockbusters at that point.
Yeah.
Cost way more. And
to have like between Gary Oldman, Anthony Hopkins, Ray Liotta, and Julianne Moore that's just some high name actors, in terms just their salary alone is going to demand a lot. So yeah.
Yeah. Is there, so we know there's a lot of things we would do to fix this movie, but we don't want to fix this movie because this movie's bad, as we understand. No. So if you think that people should watch something else instead, you're not a horror person, right, but what should people watch? Maybe another Anthony Hopkins movie.
Yeah. I think they should watch The Remains of the Day.
I might have to watch that now.
Yeah.
It sounds pleasant.
It is. It's like a good movie to fall asleep to,
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it is, I mean, that's an Ivory and Merchant and Ivory film. We love those guys. They can't really do wrong. Yeah, maybe I'm going to have to check out The Remains of the Day.
Yeah.
And just allow myself like a soothing cup of tea for my mind.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Just imagine Anthony Hopkins bringing you like a cup of tea and then a little Tupperware container of leftover brains.
I hope it's leftover scones and not leftover brains. That's all. That's what I want from Anthony Hopkins.
Because then they're told, Anthony, brain is not a leftover.
Yeah.
Right.
I feel like, yeah, you can't have leftover brain. Give it to me fresh or don't give it to me at all, Anthony. Exactly. Gwen.
Yes.
Obviously, like we said before at the top of the show, people should go get your album when it comes out. And where on social media? It's at Gwenderwoman on all the socials, correct?
On all the social medias that you do, yeah.
Go follow Gwen.
Yeah,
go follow Gwen.
Pre-order my album. I love you all.
Yay.
And don't see this movie.
Don't see this movie. Don't watch it. Don't rent it. Don't subscribe to Stars just so you can watch this movie. It's not worth it.
No.
You can find me at Diet J on Twitter and Instagram, jlightcomedy.com for show dates. I've got some road stuff coming up. I'm coming to Reno this week. I'm going to be in Kansas City doing some shows while I'm at NACA. Maybe some other stuff in March. Maybe I'll go back to Indianapolis. We'll see. But yeah, jlightcomedy.com for all the dates and stuff. And if you like the show, consider subscribing to the Patreon. We're doing weekly bonus episodes. You get access to my full film library if you subscribe at the $5 a month level. It's cheaper than all the streaming services. Netflix just jacked up their prices. Get out of here. I'm 4 times cheaper than Netflix. No thanks.
So much value.
So much value. So much better movies. And a couple cool TV shows, too. Anyway, Gwen, thanks again.
Oh, thank you. It was so great to see you.
So great to see you. This has been Blockbusting. Go see something good for a change.